So our first exercise is going to be to create a mask that moves and follows an object as it leaves the screen and reveals the shot underneath. So in this case, I have a white van and it drives out of the way and reveals a couple having a nice coffee on the outdoor cafe tables. Once you have the project up and running, you're going to want to create a new composition. So I'm going to go to the composition menu. I'm going to hit new composition and I'm going to call this car pass. I have a couple of them, so I'm going to actually put a 4 at the end of mine. You don't have to do that. We're still working in 23976. We're working in 1920 1080 and a duration of about 10 seconds is fine. So that's what we've been using. But again, if you're on a new system or a different one than you've been using, then maybe those aren't set for you. So here's your chance to set those. All right, so I have a new car pass thing. Now, if you are working out of the project we worked out of last time, then you should have already imported in footage for the exercises that we did last time. If you did not, then you need to go import into your project the graphics and effects week 10, or I'm sorry, week 9 online media. All right, so it's the same footage. So if you've already got it in your project, you don't need to do this step, but if you don't have it already in, you're going to want to go get these. We're pulling from week 9, even though this is a week 10 exercise. We're going to poach some stuff out of that. All right. So the easiest way, once all the footage is in, to find something is to know a keyword so you can just search through all the stuff that you have and find what you're looking for. So the background, or the foreground, I should say, that we have here of the city, that one has a long title, Single Man Crosses Street, blah, blah, blah. I think if you just go into the search bar for your project window here at the top and type single, then everything will drop away except for the clip that has the word single in it. And so that is what I will have you drag first down to your timeline. And I would recommend dragging it into this dark area here because that automatically aligns the beginning of the clip with the beginning of your comp. If you drag it down in the comp, it gives you the ability to drop it not perfectly aligned, which might be what you need to do if you have a long composition. But in this case, let's just start everything evenly at the front and we'll be in good shape. Now, speaking of the comp, we already know that the front sort of bracket is set for us, but let's set a range of about 5 seconds. So go about 5 seconds down, and then you can hit the letter N to close little brackets around the area we're going to loop because we don't need all 10 seconds for this particular exercise. All right, so as you watch it, you'll see the van go by, but then you get to see the stuff that was behind the van that you didn't see in my original comp. Let's go get our other piece of footage, which if I go back to my reference project, it's called something like attractive hipster young couple, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we do hipster? There can't be too many clips with the word hipster in it in my collection. And as soon as I type HIP for hip, boom, it's there. And I too am going to drag that down and I'm going to put it underneath the top shot, the shot I already dragged in. So I'm not stacking them on top. I'm literally dragging in the couple underneath because we're going to basically have the top shot wipe away to reveal what's underneath, which is the couple on the Cafe City Street. So there now you should have 2 layers. You can't see the second layer right now, but that's okay because we're going to fix that. All right, so our next step is we got to build the mask. So I'm going to click on the top layer, the one labeled Single Man Crossing Street, and I am going to go get my pen tool, and then I am going to go probably somewhere where the van is almost well, let's say like halfway across the crosswalk is where the bumper is falling. All right. And there's some reasons why I want to have it about here because it'll make it a little easier for us later. However, I want to be able to draw a little outside my image. So in my particular screen resolution, it is set right now to fit this image to my screen, but that puts it at about 44. I'm going to put it at about 25 so that I have some margin, but understand that that number is not universal. So depending on the resolution of your computer, you may have to set it for a different number, but your goal is to have it look kind of like mine. I want it to be able to have a little bit of margin because we're going to have to draw outside of the box of where the video actually is to get this to work, okay? So once you've given yourself a little margin by changing this to some smaller percentage than fit, then we will start drawing our mask. Now the goal is to basically make a shape out here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a shape that is outside of the image on the right hand side, but that yet cuts off sort of where the van is going while in the video. So what do I mean by that? So you can start at the top, you can start at the bottom. I think I'm actually going to start at the bottom, but I'm also going to start way out here like in the margins because I want some extra room. And I'm going to set a couple keyframes because I may need them later before I ever even hit the image. Now, if you want to do smooth, curvy Bezier lines, you are welcome to. It's not going to be that critical for this effect, you're not turning it into me. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm more concerned with it being something you can do in a timely manner. So just get it close, and then be sure, like you see me here, I've made sure I've got a pretty tall margin outside at the top and bottom. And then I'm going to make the shape go as far out to the side as I can make it go right now. All right, and when I touch the last connection point, it now shows me what's underneath. So it basically just did the exact opposite of what I was intending when I drew it. And that's okay. I knew it was going to do that. All I have to do is go down to my toggle switches modes little selection at the bottom of the whole timeline here and switch it, because and you may not need to switch it, but the point is I've got like motion blur and 3D and all these like checkboxes visible. I need the other one visible. So when I go down here, then I can see how things are blended, etc. Now, if I open my top layer, the single man layer, and I open the masks collapsible thing, I can get to where I can invert my mask that I just did. So when I hit invert, boom, now it's doing what I expected. I can see the van and I can't see what's behind the van because it's actually the shot that's coming into frame. So this is the way it needed to be, but we needed to get this up so that it would be there when we uncollapsed everything. All right, so this is where it gets to be not fun at all. All right, so the dance we're going to do once you see it like this is we need to move one frame at a time forward and back as needed to move this mask in time with the van. It is as arduous as you would expect. The nice thing is we don't have to redraw our mask. It's going to assume in the next keyframe that your mask is shaped the same, but it actually will probably need some adjustments. So when you want to move a single dot, if you have drawn your entire shape, then we can get off the mask tool, or I'm sorry, the pen tool, and we can go back to the selection tool, which is the arrow in the top left-hand corner, or you can hit the letter V. So I have selected the normal pointer again. Now, if one of these dots that I drew is not perfect, I can move it. I can just change the shape of my mask just a little bit and make it a little bit better, a little more accurate. However, when we jump to the next frame, we're going to want to move the entire mask. So how does that work? Well, let's start by saving this sort of original frame, because this arguably should be the best shaped masks we built, because we did it, by hand right there on this frame. So we're going to go to the mask path, and we're going to click on the stopwatch to set our first keyframe under the mask path, right where we are, looking exactly like it does now. Now, you want to go let's go backwards first. I know it seems a little odd, but I think it's good for the example to go backwards first. So if your keyboard has page up and page down, that will take you forward and back one frame at a time. All right. So when I say we're going to go backwards, we're going to let that van essentially move back to the right and fill the frame. All right, so go to the frame right before the frame we just drew, and then you'll notice that, of course, the van has moved, but your mask has not, and we want it to move. So how do we move the entire mask at the same time? Well, if you click on the mask path label here on the left-hand side for that layer, you'll notice that all your little connection points are not circles anymore, they're squares. And that means that if you grab one of these squares, the entire mask will move without changing shape. It literally just allows you to pick the whole thing up and move it back a little bit, which is probably at least the beginning of what you're going to have to do. So I moved mine back, but now my wheel isn't shaped right. I have a little too much margin on the back of this van, and it's showing more of a margin at the top that I don't like. So, okay, it's cool that I could like pick up the whole thing using those points, but what if I want a single control of over a point again? Well, the way to do that is to just click into nothing. So I'm going to click off into nothing, and then you'll notice, boom, they all turn back into circles. And then I can actually go in and I can fix the shape of the mask to be more correct. All right. And we're going to keep doing that pattern over and over again. So I got this next frame looking pretty good. Now I'm going to go back again. I need to move the whole thing, so I'm going to click over to the mask path again, and when I click on that layer, boom, everything turns into squares, and then I have the ability to grab one of the squares and pull the shape back a little bit once again. But it's not what I want to do now. I've accomplished that. It's time for me to start changing some of the individual dots. So I clicked into nothing, and now I am clicking around on the dots to reshape them so that everything looks the way it's supposed to. All right, and you're just going to keep doing that, and you're going to keep going backwards one frame at a time until you get them all looking pretty good. Now you'll notice the van doesn't completely block the frame the whole time. So like we have the ground, we're going to eventually have to make a choice on what we're going to see. And I pretty much follow the shadow of the van, at least for this portion. So I'm going to go back again. I'm going to select mask path so I can move everything together, move it all together. And then click into nothing, fix whatever pixels, or they're not called pixels, I guess they're anchor points. Whatever anchor points have to move. That's probably not even the right term now that I think about it. But just keep fixing it, get it close, go back a frame, grab the whole thing again, move it back. If you want, I can shut up because you probably have already figured out the pattern and you don't need me to say things over and over again. When you are done going back, then you will have to jump to the front and go forward. Fun. It's exciting. Pen tool attributes. And you'll notice like here I'm on a frame right now, and the frame before the same shape works, the frame before the same shape works. You get lucky eventually if you get the angle of the rooftop right and the angle of the ground right. Pretty much can just let it be for a little while. It's part of why I have you do this one first. Then you have to start figuring out where the wipe is going to cheat on the top. I would make sure once you think it's off the frame, and pull it back a good amount back so that if you feather it, it doesn't show up like parked on the edge of the frame. Here we have it coming in. It worked pretty well. It sort of cheats with the rooftop. I could try to fix that because the rooftop does touch, but I don't think it's a problem. All right, and then I'm going to go back to my first one, and I'm going to start dealing with going the other direction. That keyframe looks great. That one looks terrible. Forward. You'll notice as it comes to us, because of proportions, it needs a lot more adjustment than backwards, which is part of why I have you go backwards first, because it's a little easier to get your head around before you have to start done it this way where you have to pretty much fix everything else. It looks really bad. I'm going to tell you, it is remarkably forgiving when something moves through the frame this fast. Really, do a decent job, but then play it for yourself and see if you don't agree with it. Oh, it's not that bad, even though I know I didn't finish. But obviously, if this was a tree or a body passing in front of the lens, like you see in a lot of movies, you can hide it sometimes just with a wipe. I've gotten away with just a simple soft edge wipe many times and not even gone into After Effects. But the thing is, as soon as I have a tree or something that's a little more organic shaped, I always wish I could do this because it makes it so much more elegant. So to have done it once is a very helpful thing. Then at least you know how hard it is, and you can gauge whether this is something you think is worth it within the project you're building or not. But I'm going to tell you, people notice. People notice these kinds of tricks. They really do. So when in doubt, I'll do it and hope that people will think it's cool. Now you'll notice I'm starting to run into what could be a dangerous thing here as the van is going by. My tail end here is getting awfully close, so I'm going to start moving these points out so that I have a large enough margin when I start getting closer. So exciting. This is not mind-blowing. However, this might be one of the most common tricks you use. It's actually fairly cool and easy to do, and it makes your footage feel like it's higher quality when you have your scenes connected this way. It's one of those things you're like, yeah, I think that's worth it. I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to make that tree or that mailbox or whatever pass by the camera. Give you that real nice connected feel in the shots. Almost done. Hopefully you're not far from done. Shape, it's amazing. You don't think a van is going to change shape much as it sort of value. It does. It really does. The scale changes on the front at a different rate than the back. And you've got to be able to do that. Now there are some motion tracking tricks that can do some of this, but I'm going to tell you, especially as I've become more familiar with the motion tracking capabilities. The motion tracking capabilities of After Effects. Doing it by hand is still probably the best bet when it comes to something like this. Alright, so now my shape has completely overtaken the image. Bigger so everybody can see what I did. Comes in. The ground sort of precedes the van. This sort of triangle of the ground coming in, almost like a shadow. You can see the shadow of the van, so I kind of cheat and bring in the ground early. Worked pretty well. Now the last thing is we put a little bit of feathering on this. So mask feather is right underneath mask path. You do not need to keyframe it. You can just say I want to feather the whole thing the same way. So by putting a little feathering on it, you can double check your work and see if that didn't make it look even better. I like to click down into nothing so it turns off my mask line so that I can actually see what it really looks like and judge appropriately. Yeah, that's not terrible. Not great, not terrible. So we took the time to mask this top layer. Hooray for us. But we actually already, in the way that this is built, have essentially already decided what our two shots are going to be, right? We brought in our two shots. We have the van shot and we have the couple shot. Maybe that's making too many decisions at this stage. So what you could do is you could sort of do this. You could do an export and go, boom, I connected my two shots, yay me. Or you could say, why don't I just turn off the bottom shot, let this wipe onto nothing, and then export it with an alpha channel. Then when you bring it into Premiere or you give it to your editor to use in Premiere, they can wipe the van, use the van to wipe on any shot they want. So you've left that decision to them. There's no reason you have to composite, the next shot in. I think it's smart to sort of know if the two shots work together or not. I try to usually, give it to my graphics guys, give them both. But I'll tell them, hey, just wipe it on and let me put whatever underneath I need to put underneath. Because what if, like, this is a moment, this is a scene, and he says a certain line here, and the director in the 11th hour goes, I want a different take of him saying that line. Well, are you going to want to have to crack open After Effects just to redo the effect? I'm not going to. I'm much more inclined to say, hey, I'm just going to export it with an alpha, and then I can swap out whatever I want there. We know how to do that, right? We did it last week. ProRes 4444, the fourth four, and then turn on RGB and alpha when you export, and it'll work. So something to consider when building something like this. Maybe you don't even know yet. Maybe you shot a shot with a body swipe in front of it, or a mailbox, or the corner edge of something, and you even don't know yet where it's going to go. You can start taking that shot in here and, doing your mask ahead of time before you even get that far in the edit, and just know, oh, I have two versions of the van driving by shot. The original, where we actually don't have a transition, and then the one I built that has a transition in it. The point is, keep your options open, and it will save your butt in the 11th hour. I can almost guarantee it, because building everything in After Effects and having to re-export it all is pain, and sometimes is unavoidable. But when it is avoidable, you're going to kick yourself for not thinking about that. All right.